Well, after 2 seasons, we finally get the backstory we've been waiting for Clive in another great episode that gives us some of the most hilarious and tragic stuff to date.
I am already there.
Hey guys, remember iZombie, Season 3, Episode 2, Zombie Knows Best, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. You guys know I really did love the premiere, the premiere that went down last week. I just reviewed the premiere, and I was definitely really looking forward to this episode. And this was another really great episode for a couple reasons. One, it was definitely one of the funniest that we've had, incorporating both Major and Liv. You know, now that Major's a zombie, there's a lot more they could play around with, and that was a lot of fun to see. But the other really big thing about this is that, yes, there was a case. The case actually, basically how I expect it to be. I expect the first episode to not have a case, and then this episode would. And I think the rest of the episodes of the season probably are until the finale. That's usually the deal with this show. But I did love, the other big thing this episode is that we finally got a lot in regards to Clive's past. As I said in the intro, we finally really did get his backstory, and they've definitely alluded to things here and there, but not quite in the way they did it here, and that was one of the reasons why this episode was so great, and I really do love this episode overall. But let's just get into it because there definitely is a lot to talk about, and we start off and we see Cavanaugh, and I really like this character of Cavanaugh because up till now, the only detective we've seen on the show, was the one detective who turned out to be a zombie in season 1, you know, like the boss of Liv and Clive. I don't remember his name, but he was a detective, as we know. And then, of course, you know, Clive. Those are the only detectives we have. Well, now we have Cavanaugh, and he hears the chief yelling at Clive, calls him over to his desk as he comes out, and the detective says that Wally listed Clive as his emergency contact, and Clive says he was working undercover in the building and encountered Wally a few times. And you get the sense throughout this episode that Clive is answering a lot of things that he really does not want to answer. You know, this is a relation with someone that he kind of wanted to keep, you know, on tap. Like, he really just wanted to keep under wraps, and he didn't want many people to know about it, but now is time for him to confess, and I really love seeing this, because there's some really hard stuff here. Basically, Clive's trying to sleep when he hears Wally bouncing a ball off the apartment wall. He goes down the hallway, talks to the boy, and Clive has a very thick mustache here, which is really cool, which I thought was interesting, but Cavanaugh isn't convinced. He shows Clive a photo that he found of Clive with Wally and his mother, and, you know, he isn't really convinced that this actually happened. So later at the morgue, Ravi tells Clive and Cavanaugh that all 3 victims died of a single bullet each to the head, and Cavanaugh points out that there wasn't much blood at the crime scene, and Clive suggests the bodies were moved after death, and he points out the missing fingernails, and basically, Rose says that they were extracted post-mortem, but Cavanaugh notes that the dead uncle, Caleb Tuttle, worked for Fillmore Graves, the company that bought out Max Rager, and wonders why a military contractor bought out an energy drink company. You know, why would that happen? So Ravi shows him Wally's body, and Clive remembers earlier talking to Cavanaugh, and Clive tells Cavanaugh that Wally and his mother Anna lived right next door to him, and sometimes they had him over, and he explains that Wally's father was actually a bit of a nightmare, and basically, as Clive eats, he hears Anna and her husband Rick arguing. He finally knocks on their door, barges in, he pins Rick and arrests him. So yeah, he was kind of the father for Wally when Rick wasn't there. And Clive says that the father got 8 months in county, and once Cavanaugh leaves, Liv asks Clive if he's alright. He says that he is, and suggests they give it a day before they head over to Fillmore Graves so they don't cross paths with Cavanaugh, because again, it's just a lot of hard stuff. Like, he really did care about this kid, and you can as the episode goes on, you realize more and more why he is so passionate with this, and why he cares so much about this, and why it's so hard for him to admit, but I thought that was definitely very well done. But then we get the case set up here, because that night we see Stan Shen and his daughter Cindy, they're driving over to Cindy's skating practice, and Cindy complains he's ruining her life, and a vehicle quickly slams into them, which basically jump starts the case for the rest of this episode, and I thought that was a really good way to start things up. So the next day, Ravi, Clive, and Liv are called to the crime scene. Clive explains who the victims are and that the killer was accelerating at the point of impact, and Clive points out that the truck could have hit the Chen's car without taking much damage, and Liv points out that she and Major haven't eaten brains since Janko, and yeah, that's a big thing now, is that Major is now going to partake in the brain eating, because of course he is a zombie, and that is one of the best parts of this episode. Thank God that Major is a zombie, because we would not get what we get here if Major was not a zombie, because basically, Liv has already be in Stan's brain, and Major warns that he shouldn't be on Teenage Girl brain, but Liv tells him to suck it up, and he says that one of the Chaos Killer victims saw Natalie beg Janko to call a number on her behalf, which was Major's number, and Clive offers to run the number. And Major then eats Cindy's brain while Liv and Clive go to the bank where Stan worked as a manager. And later, Major considers what to do next. Ravi says that Peyton left him a message saying that she wants to talk, and this is one of those episodes where there's no Blaine. The show typically does that. I don't know if Robert Anders is busy, but he always misses like 1 or 2 episodes a season, and he was not here. And Major says that Peyton wasn't here either. Major says that Peyton deserved time with Ravi, and the coroner realizes that the Major is overreacting because of Cindy's influence. And his this whole thing with Major on Teenage Girl Brain is some of the funniest stuff we've had with Major yet. The actor who plays him, I believe his name is Robert Buckley. He was incredible in this episode, just so fun to watch, so versatile, and just what I love about this show is the way that these actors are getting to play different sides of characters. Like, you know, Rose McGiver, she gets to do it every episode. I like that we had Robert Buckley actually get to do that for once. I thought that was really fun to see. He breaks into tears. He talks about Ravi being his best friend, and Ravi admits that they are, and he starts singing rock music, and Liv and Clive then return, tells Liv, and Liv tells Major to turn it down. They start arguing, father and daughter, and it's hilarious. It's like they are father and daughter. Liv's being very assertive, and Major's talking to her like, you know, like Cindy would, and Clive says that all of Stan's coworkers loved him, and Major says that he is mercenary training and tells Liv to stop controlling him, and again, he's talking in this dialect, and everything he does sounds like a teenage girl. Just really fun stuff there. But at Fillmore Graves, Major admires the abs on 2 of the mercenaries. They figure that he's not on the tubes, which apparently there's this tube where if you take it, you experience the effects of the brain slightly less, like it has less of an impact on you. So I don't know if that's going to be explored more, but they explain that they got mashed brains and tubes so they don't have mood swings, and Major gets a flash of Cindy showing Stan a photo that she took and him saying that they have to take it to the authorities, and Cindy says that they can't because Winslow will never forgive her. So who knows really what that's all about, but back at the morgue, Major tells the others what he saw. Clive has found one girl, which was Winslow Sutcliffe, who Cindy had classes with, and Major says that he couldn't see the photo in the vision. It explains about the brain tubes, and Liv insists that they eat whole brains and solve murders, and Ravi tries to inspire a vision in Liv of what Stan saw, and nothing happens. The new IT guy then comes in. Clive has to see what he can get off of the remains of the camera, and Liv and Clive to meet with Vivian. And we don't get as much with Vivian as we did in the last episode, but she explained that she supported Baracus as the first zombie mayor of Seattle, and she figures that humans killed Wally's family. That's another reason why they should be, you know, against humans, which honestly does make a lot of sense, because humans are the one that killed them. And Liv and Clive to meet with the Fillmore Graves staff members, and Wally's teacher says that Wally was beloved, and Anna was a teacher's aide. And we then get another flashback where Anna actually asked Clive to let Wally hang out at his place while he works her shift at a diner, and Clive reluctantly agrees in return for pie. Anna leaves Wally off. They're soon watching Game of Thrones and eating takeout, and Anna comes by later with pie, and Clive tells him that everything went fine. She's less than thrilled that Clive let a 9-year-old watch Game of Thrones. Obviously, probably not the best show for a 9-year-old to watch. I personally didn't watch it till I was like 15, 14, I don't remember however old I was when I first started reviewing it for you guys. That's how I was when I started watching Game of Thrones, but Clive explains that he covered... That's another story. I don't think you guys care about that. Clive explains that he covered Wally's eyes while there was nudity and beheading, and he realizes that Anna's actually just fucking with him. They share a laugh, and she's not actually that upset, and that was a really fun moment. I like seeing more development between these two. You can see why Wally meant so much to Clive, and that's something I thought, again, was very well portrayed here. So Liv then tells Clive that everyone there seems to be worried about what they're saying on the radio, and Clive says he had an idea about interviewing Winslow. So they bring her in, and Clive and Liv interview while Major stands in the background, still on Major Teenage Brain, which is just hilarious to watch. And Winslow insists that she loves Cindy to death, and Clive asks why Winslow unfriended her on Facebook the night before Cindy was murdered. And he knows they sent texts back and forth, asks what they were about, and Winslow says that Cindy was judgmental, and she explains that she was sleeping when Cindy was killed. However, she knew the route then they would take, and Major complains that Clive is badgering Winslow, and Liv starts to tell him to be quiet. Again, I love the interplay between these two. She gets a vision of Cindy then showing Stan a selfie of Winslow in bed with a guy, so we now kind of have an idea what's going on. It seems that Winslow was involved in some sort of affair, and Liv then asks Winslow if she and Cindy fell out over a guy, and Winslow sees her stepfather through the window, says that she has to go. Liv sees him, realizes that he's the guy in the photo, and once Winslow leaves, Liv tells Clive and Major what she saw. Clive points out they have no evidence, but someone might kill to cover up statutory rape, because obviously it is statutory rape, even if she agreed to it, and he then goes to find the judge, who will give them a warrant to check Winslow's phone, and a bum Major leaves. Again, Major, just on Teenage Brain, is just the best, but the next day, Clive and Liv then go to the nursery that Winslow's mother, Tori, owns, and the stepfather, Ken, runs, and many of the parks and towns are named for the Sutcliffe family, and Tori let her stockbroker husband and ran off with Ken, buying him in the business, and they find a large truck but no signs of damage on the fender, so Ken's then working nearby. Clive introduces them and asks if Winslow has access to the truck, and Clive then asks where he was at the time of the murder, and Tori arrives to say he was in bed with her, sleeping at the time, and she says that Winslow came home in tears after Clive had questioned her, and Clive shows them the warrant for Winslow's phone. Tori tells Winslow to hand the phone over, and Winslow then reluctantly agrees. You can tell he doesn't want to do it, obviously, because of what's on the phone and what's going on there, but she doesn't want to hand over the phone. But at the morgue, Ravi notices that Liv has been fine-tuning everything in the morgue. He says that he can't stop thinking about Peyton and Blaine, and this was a really well-done scene. I've always loved Ravi and Liv's relationship, and I really love this scene because Liv is talking to Ravi, not as a friend, but kind of like as a fatherly figure, which was kind of weird, but also very well done, because that's the brain she has, and he's been avoiding Peyton because he's afraid he'll blow everything up, and Liv tells him to give himself a little more credit, figuring that he's better than that. She tells Ravi to be honest and direct, and Ravi then thanks her for the advice, and it was a really nice scene. I like the way that was done. You can tell that he's worried because, he doesn't know if Peyton actually had genuine feelings for Blaine, or if Blaine is just saying it, which is understandable. I mean, him and Peyton really never had that conversation about Blaine, and right now he can't because Peyton is with Blaine right now, so he obviously is kind of worried. And again, I don't know if I want to do a love triangle, but if they do it this way, where it's more of an emotional thing and less of them fighting over Peyton, then maybe I'll like it. I don't know. I don't know if I really want to see them do a love triangle. I don't really know if I want to see the show do that. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. We'll have to see the way it plays out. But I do like the way the storyline is going, where Ravi really does still care about Peyton. I think that's something that's always been there, and he really thought that I think he personally thought that he finally had Peyton, that he finally was going to be able to have a relationship and actually genuinely, have some sort of a relationship with her. But now he's realizing that she actually wanted to be with Blaine, and he feels kind of left out, and you can understand why he feels away. But basically, Liv tells him, and basically Clive then comes in, says that Winslow received a citation for driving without a license and could drive a stick shift like the truck at the nursery. And later at his desk, Clive then calls the judge and explains that they're trying to get Winslow away from her abuser. However, the judge unfortunately can't help him, and we then get another flashback where Wally watches Clive. He's cutting up carrots. He then has to try it. So we then get another flashback where Wally watches Clive cut up carrots and they ask to try it, and Clive checks with Anna, who sends Wally to get washed up. They share a glass of wine, and Anna says that her brother Caleb is coming back from overseas and she wants to stay with him, worried that Rick will come there despite the restraining orders, and Clive points out that he's just next door, but Anna doesn't want to take him for granted. So Wally comes in, tells him to get over with it and kiss, and now we can start to see really why this is such a fond memory for Clive. I mean, clearly Anna was someone who he really did like, and who I think he really took an interest in. I think he really wanted to be that fatherly figure for Wally, and he really thought that he could have this relation with Anna, but of course, we know the way it's turning out, and that's why these scenes are all the more devastating. So, Tori and Winslow come in the station. Tori says that Ken killed Stan and Cindy, and he's the one who did it, but in the interrogation room, Tori explains that Winslow confessed to her she's been having consensual but illegal relations with Ken, and after Clive and Liv come to see them, Ken stole some of Tori's money and actually left, and Winslow admits that a week ago, Ken actually broke things off, and she was so upset that she told Cindy, and Tori says that after the Chens were killed, she knows that Ken had taken the bush bumpers off the truck and figures that he was hiding evidence. And Clive then wonders how Ken knew that the Chens were going to the police, and Winslow says that she didn't tell them. So The IT guy then calls Clive and Liv in the next room, says that he recovered the Detroit text, and the final text between Winslow and Cindy actually is Winslow saying that if Stan goes to the police, then he's dead. And they realize that Winslow must have told Ken that Stan was going to the police, but the IT guy says that really isn't necessarily true. And that always seems to happen in the show where it's like, oh, this person definitely is the murderer, but it's not them. So back in the interrogation room, Clive says that the killer had to know that Stan was going to the authorities. He says that their IT guy found an app on her phone called Tinker Spy, and it sends all calls to a pair. And there's a phone number associated with a subscription, and the IT guy calls it, and Tori's phone then rings, and Tori tells Winslow that what she did was disgusting, and they both would have been disinherited, and Clive then puts Tori under arrest for the Chen's murder, and it turns out that Tori actually is the one who's responsible for that, so that was kind of surprising. But Clive then tells Liv that Winslow's going to be staying with an aunt, and he's put it in an APB on Ken, and Ravi then comes over, says he heard something on Chuck Bird's show. Remember, Chuck Bird was that radio host that almost exposed what was going on. But basically, it has a caller saying that he found brains in a tube in Anna's garage, and Clive then calls the radio station to get the caller's number. Ravi tells Liv that he's going to call Peyton, and as they go to get coffee, Clive joins them, says the caller lived next to Wally and his family, and again, it's really sad because you know he really cared about them. And Clive and Liv then go to the caller Huntsman, say they have some follow-up questions. Liv points out that if he thought his neighbors were zombies, he would have shot them in the head, and Huntsman says that he was in Portland for his sister's wedding on the night of the murders and shows them a message board of people with similar beliefs. He put up the same information that he called Chuck Bird with, but never gave his address, and Huntsman figured that someone hacked his profile and found it, and everyone on the board knew that he had zombies living next door, which he did. And later, Clive and Liv tell Vivian what they found. She explains that they figured they had 36 months till the civilian populace learned their secret, but it's only been 21 months. So it seems that some of them know, and Clive then gets a call from the station that they've located Ken's credit card, and he heads out, and once they bring Ken into the station, Ken actually tries to run, but Clive easily grabs him, has the units take him away, and Cavanaugh comes in, asks when he last saw Wally and Anna, and Clive explains he was undercover for 2 weeks after Rick's release, and he couldn't get to them, and when he did get back, they unfortunately were gone, and Anna sent him a letter saying she was living with Caleb and didn't want to stay in touch, and Cavanaugh says that Rick was out for 5 days and then got arrested for assaulting his police officer, and has been locked up ever since. So as Clive goes, Cavanaugh asks him when he got the letter, and Clive says it was 22 months ago, which really was not that long ago, and he admits that he's considered what might have happened if he'd been there when Rick gets out, that maybe he could have had a real future with Anna, but unfortunately that's not the life that Clive lives, and it really ends in a devastating way, but that is how this episode ends. Really great stuff overall. Let's just get this episode and where I think this is going to take us. So overall, guys, this was another really great episode, but really a lot to consider going into the rest of the season. First of all, let's talk about Clive. I really love what we got here, between everything we got here with him and Anna, and how he really wanted to have this life with her, and how I think he really felt compelled to be that father figure in Wally's life. And I think if he were to go back, he probably would have gone with Anna, but that's not what his life is. His life now is being a cop and working with Liv and all this stuff he's done. And I think, you know, there's a lot of regret in that, and you can really tell that he didn't want to let Cavanaugh in about a lot of this stuff, and it's understandable why. I mean, this was a lot of stuff that he very much does regrets, and it's just a very well done plot. I really do love the show's giving Clive a lot more to do, and I think it's mainly because he's not as separated from everything else. They can give him a lot more, you know, he's a lot more involved with the story now, and because of that, they're really starting to give Clive a lot more, and I'm happy to see that. I think this was definitely something that we've deserved for 2 seasons now, and I don't think the show has really ever done flashbacks before. I can't really remember them doing flashbacks, and I thought it was really cool the way the show did that, so that was definitely very well done, and that was definitely one of the highlights this episode. But just as great was Major on the teenage brain. I absolutely love that, just him taking selfies, and his obsession with emojis and things like that. All of that was so funny. I really did love all of that stuff. Let's talk about what's going on here with this radio guy, this guy that now this guy, Chuck Bird. We now know that someone did in fact hack Huntsman's profile, and everyone on the board knows about these zombies. So yeah, I mean, this is definitely becoming already a very imperative situation that they really have to be careful the way they handle this, because if they don't handle this right, people are going to get the wrong idea. So who really knows what's going to happen here, if they're going to be able to keep this under wraps or if not. Again, that's something that I think Liv is really going to have to figure out what she wants to do with. So we'll have to see really where that's all going to go. I think that whole story is definitely very interesting. And again, I think it just adds a lot more to this season. There's a lot more story going on there, and I really do like the way all of that's being set up. And I like that Vivian's not really a full-fledged enemy like right now. Like, I think she's going to be an enemy later on, but right now she's kind of working with them, and they don't really know what to do, so they're just kind of reporting things back to her because why not? I mean, she is a zombie, you know, she's not against them, so they might as well appeal to her, and it makes sense why. I thought that was definitely, again, very well handled. But I also really like where Ravi's going because, yes, initially I wasn't looking forward to a love triangle here, but I do like that most of this is Ravi feeling like, you know, he had time with Peyton, that maybe he could have this relationship with her, and that maybe things, you know, could have gone well for him, and that maybe he finally had her after 2 seasons of trying to sweep her off her feet. He thought that finally he had her, and that she was finally his girl, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. She now seems to have an interest in Blaine. He doesn't really know where it's come from, and it's obviously frustrating. I mean, I've definitely been in that situation where there's been a girl I really liked, and I thought I had her, but I just didn't, and I think that's exactly what Ravi's going through here, where he really thought that him and Peyton had something, and that maybe they had a relationship, and now she seems to like Blaine, and he really doesn't know what to do, and I really like the way that's being handled. I think if they handle this right, I think this could be a very interesting storyline. I'm looking forward to seeing really where all that's going to go. I think everything there is very interesting. I also really like Cavanaugh. I like that we have another officer investigating this case. Like I said, Clive can't do it because he has a connection to one of the victims, that being Wally and Anna, and he can't get involved with that. So I like that he isn't part of the case right now. I think it's just a different dynamic for him, and I think definitely that's helping out the show by, you know, giving him something a little bit different to do than he usually does. I think all of that is definitely very well handled. And I also like what's going on, you know, with all of these zombies. You know, there seems to be these zombies everywhere. You know, people are starting to get acknowledged more of what's going on. And I don't know how exactly it's going to go. Again, if they're going to be able to cover all this up, I think very quickly the public is going to be let in on what's going on. And I think the zombie apocalypse is definitely going to happen very soon. So we'll have to see the way all that plays out. No Blaine this episode, which was kind of a smart choice. I don't really think Blaine would have fit into this episode with all the flashbacks and things like that. I think that really made up for all the Blaine stuff. So we're going to see Blaine next week, definitely, but we didn't see him here, which usually that's a downside. But because of how great things were, you know, with Major, now that Major's able to have those visions, and we have someone for Liv actually to have, you know, interplay with when she is on these different brains, it's a lot more worthwhile. I found a lot of times when we just had Liv on a brain, it would get tiring after a while, and that doesn't seem to be the case with Major. There's a lot more fun stuff with them, and overall, I definitely really did enjoy this episode, and I definitely am going to give iZombie Season 3, Episode 2, Zombie Knows Best, the same grade I gave the last episode, that being a 4.5 out of 5 or an A-. So overall, guys, there you have it. I am officially caught up to iZombie. I've watched every episode so far. I'm definitely very happy I did that. I'm glad that I was finally able to get these reviews out to you guys. But let me know what you guys thought of this season so far. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Where do you think all of this is going? Did you like the Clive stuff? Did you like the Major stuff? For me, that's probably maybe some of the funniest stuff the show has done to date, and I really did love that. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for a movie review, which I know it's been so long since I've done a movie review, but I am going to do one, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.